beginning to unwind a little bit now. Let's talk about how European business views the UK Brexit referendum. Europe would be without the UK, and it would be weaker and less prosperous as a result. That's the view of CIR chairman Rodolfo De Benedetti. In a letter published in the Financial Times, he and other European business leaders have appealed for Britain to remain in the EU. He joins us now exclusively from Milan. Good morning, Mr. De Benedetti. When I look at how European business is perceiving the Brexit referendum story, has it been a rather sort of rude awakening over the last few days that there is even the possibility that this may actually come true, that the UK may actually decide to leave?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Yes, I think the perception of European businessmen has probably changed over the last few months. A few months ago, the prospect of Brexit was considered to be a remote risk. I think it has changed over the last few months and particularly weeks. I think polls are concerning and preoccupying marketplaces and companies. I think that this would be a very negative development, not only for the UK, but you know, for the whole of Europe, and risk creating a circle of instabilities throughout the continent.
I mean, speaking of instabilities throughout the continent, how do you feel the economy is doing right now anyway? In Europe, ex-UK, in Italy specifically, how does it feel to you?
I think Europe has been economically weak for a long time, for many years. It looks to me as in the last couple of years it has started to pick up selectively in certain countries. I think the UK was one of the first countries to really start to grow again. Then you had some positive developments in countries like Spain. Italy has been a bit of a laggard, but I would say that in the last 12 months the economy has marginally gotten better. I think this is the result of what is happening in the rest of Europe, but also of some structural reforms that the Italian government has taken. They're a beginning. They're not enough. I think more needs to be done, but I think we are in the right direction. And I think one of the big issues about this Brexit risk is that it risks derailing a better economic climate that we've seen in the last quarters. And I've seen a study that was made by the UK Treasury that was forecasting both a short-term and a medium-term shock to the British economy, with possibly more than £4,000 of lower GDP per capita in the next 2 years, which is really worrying, with rising unemployment, devaluation of the currency, and more importantly, I think that this would have or could have an adverse effect on the rest of Europe, and give room and ideas to other countries and to populist tensions and movements in other countries to imitate what's going on in the UK.
Rodolfo, would you expect the five-star movement to gain a great deal of traction were a Brexit to happen? If you look at the momentum that the party has in Italy right now, that would certainly be an easy conclusion to draw. Just give us your sense of when you have your ear to the ground. Is that what you hear as well?
Yes, I think unfortunately populism is on a growing market share trend globally. I think the debate about the U.S. elections, I think what's going on with the UK referendum, I think the local elections that Italy is going through, and we'll have a vote this coming weekend. Extreme right parties in France or in Austria or in other countries in Europe. I think you're seeing that all over the place. There is basically a major discontent, which is focusing on issues like immigration and like growing inequalities in our societies. Absolutely. So there are a lot of, I think, societal issues which are real, which are important, which part of the population doesn't feel represented and doesn't feel that they're addressed and tackled. And I think this opens up room for those protest votes. And the problem, and what I'm really, saddened, is that oftentimes those votes, people go to those votes to express something totally different from the object of the vote. I don't think that people going to vote... sorry.
Rodolfo, how do you see this playing out? I mean, what is your take on what we're going to see next Thursday? Does the UK actually vote to leave, or do you think they're still in the clear to stay in the EU?
It's always difficult and risky to make those predictions, but I would put my money on Remain.
Let's kind of pick up and just ask it from a sort of commercial point of view. Would UK business be more competitive if it were to be outside the EU? And I ask this for a couple of reasons. First of all, because maybe it wouldn't have to deal with some of the regulations that come out of Brussels, and that's the argument that is made by many in the Leave campaign. I suspect there's going to be more of a clouded picture there. But a substantially weaker sterling could give British business a competitive export advantage.
I don't buy this argument. I believe that if Britain were to leave the EU, it would suffer enormously. More than 50% of trade, of the UK trade, goes to the rest of Europe. And I think that if the UK were to leave, I think this would open up a very long period of uncertainty. Britain would have to renegotiate all of its trade agreement with Europe first, but also with the rest of the world, because today that is covered by the EU trade agreements. And I think this would be a huge challenge from an execution point of view to renegotiate those trade agreements. It would be very long. It would be it would open up uncertainty, and I think the effect on the economy would be very negative. Yes.
Rodolfo, we're going to have to leave it there, unfortunately. A fantastic conversation, and thank you very much indeed for your time. The CIR chairman, Rodolfo De Benedetti, joining us out of Milan.